It is Friday, December 5th, about 11:30 in the morning. This is the All 32 podcast with yours truly, Mike Giardi. We're recording this right now in my home studios, which is to say my basement, with some bookshelves and some pictures thrown up, which they always look crooked. What are you going to do? Proud member, of course, of the CLNS Media Network, and of course, brought to you by the number one daily fantasy sports app in North America. That is Prizepicks, where it's good to be right. I thought we'd do a mostly all mailbag edition here during this bye week, our second podcast of the week. But I did want to start off with some thoughts that I'm expanding on for Boston Sports Journal this weekend in my weekend notebook, and that is on the head coach, Mike Vrabel. And as I sat here during the bye week and sort of reflected on what's happened this season, obviously, as I've said a million times, I don't think anybody, even maybe the largest fanboy, and I say that with all due respect to my heart, expected them to be 11-2 after 13 games. And that's even when you factored in the world's easiest schedule. I know I had some people on BSJ who were like 12 wins seems real. And of course, as I seem to mention every week, Taylor Kyles, 12 or 13 wins. I apologize to him weekly on this podcast and elsewhere for trying to bully him out of that take. But when I look at what's happened this season, and as I've said, there's a million and one reasons for it, you've got to go back to Mike Vrabel and the coaching staff that he's put together and the importance of that group being able to reach all corners of the locker room, which is critical, being able to highlight a player's strengths and minimize their weaknesses. But this all comes from Vrabel's vision, right? He spent the year in Cleveland last year in the offensive line room working with the tight ends, but seeing how a different operation worked after spending, the last, 6 seasons as the Tennessee Titans head coach. And we've asked him often this year, not me personally, but others have, about what's different, what's changed about you. And he never really wants to answer that question. He always refers to the idea that last year, not being a head coach reminded him that that's all he wants to do, that it is where he is at his best. It is his happy place, if you will, and that it reinforced the notion that he needed to get back, get one of those 32 jobs, and do what he feels like he's been meant to do at this stage of his life. But as someone who covered him frequently during their time in Tennessee, especially when they were a good football team, and I worked at the NFL Network, and then having talked to a number of his players about him during that time and then since that time, and I'm talking about guys like Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, Kevin Byard, Jeffrey Simmons, and Ben Jones, his center, who they had a great bond. Talking to those guys about him, and they would always say, he's so hard on the best players. You never, when you thought you played great, he would remind you that you could have done something else differently. But what I've seen here in this next iteration of Mike, if you will, is that he still demands that of his best players. It's still different for those guys than it may be for the 53rd man on the roster or 59 on the practice squad or whatever the case may be. But he's softened a little bit in that regard. And I think it's a nod to this modern athlete, and certainly has changed since Mike was a player in the National Football League. It certainly has changed since even he was a rookie head coach in Tennessee, and that's not that long ago, 7-8 years ago. But because of NIL, because of AAU, because of how people fawn over some of these kids when they're in high school and in college, there's a different mentality, not from all the players, because there's still the guys that understand, like, the only way I'm going to remain here is if I run through a wall every time my coach asks me to run through a wall. And then I do it sometimes when he doesn't ask, just to remind him that that's the kind of guy I am. But some of these other players, some of these other athletes, they want to know the why. New England fans lived this famously a few years ago when Mac Jones was constantly asking why, and it sort of rubbed people the wrong way. But that's what you get now in the modern NFL with a lot of these athletes. And so there's still plenty of that in the Patriots locker room, but Vrabel's able to, along with the coaching staff, to answer the whys for them in a manner that makes them feel ownership for what this team is all about, but at the same time reminding them that I am still king of the hill of this team. And I wanted to go back to something that Ben Jones said, and it's how I finished my piece. And I should have had it called up here. So bear with me for just a split second. Oh, you know what? It may not log in. Oh, no, hang on. Hold on, please. Hold, please. About sort of looking at Vrabel and talking about Vrabel. And this was an interview I did with Ben on January the 8th. So before the Patriots had even hired him. And we talked about a number of things, and you can find that on Boston Sports Journal. But the last quote, and it's the one that's kind of stuck with me basically the entirety of this, what's now a brief still tenure for Mike Vrabel in New England. But what Ben said here is, and I'm going to read it for you. What sets him apart from every other coach is he is a head coach. And he said that with emphasis. He's not a defensive coordinator. He's not an offensive coordinator. He is a leader of men. Everything runs through him in the building, and he is the heartbeat in that O-line room, the tight ends room. He spends time in every room where a lot of these coaches are calling plays and doing that, and they lose the heartbeat of the team because they're not spending much time with everybody. He won't do that, and I think that's what makes him special. And I think you're seeing that. And I've talked to you about this during OTAs and during the summer where, at one moment Vrabel is with the offense and he's talking to Drake Maye, and then literally 3 minutes later, you're like, where did he go? Oh, he's down there working on one-on-one drills with undrafted free agent Elijah Ponder on pass rush. And then 10 minutes after that, he's in the middle of the O-line group lecturing them about something or technique-wise and demonstrating because he's very much a hands-on guy. As we know, the famous Will Campbell story, when they went to scout him, he put on the blocking pad and Will Campbell put him on his ass. And he said, I just wanted to feel him. I want to be able to feel how they move. And I think it's beyond that. He wants to understand how they think and how he can get the best of them. He speaks to guys differently, and he has managed through 13 weeks of the National Football League season to get the most out of pretty much each and every one. That is why they are currently 11-2. Again, a massive surprise to this point in the season. But at this point, I mean, you look around the rest of the league, and I've said a bunch. You look around the rest of the league and you say to yourself, why not them? Truly, why not them? I think they are the best team in the AFC, or certainly playing the best of any team in the AFC. Before we get to mailbag questions, a reminder, this episode brought to you by our great title sponsor, Prizepicks. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prizepicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss out on the excitement of the football season on Prizepicks, where it's good to be right. Prizepicks, simple to play. Just pick 2 players, up to 6, more or less on statistical projections. And I'll give you an example, because one of the great things about Prizepicks is the offer stacks, which means you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. Drake Maye has been on a heater. He is the front runner for MVP. I have been leaning into this constantly, whether it's more passing yards and more passing completions and more passing touchdowns, or more on the longest pass play of the game. He's constantly, there's always a 35 to 40 to 50-yard bomb sprinkled in there on every single week. But you can do 3 times with the same player in the lineup. They are the only daily fantasy sports app that allows you to do that. Download the Prizepicks app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, where it is good to be right. Let's get to the mailbag question. We did a few of these earlier this week. I had a lot of fun with it. Put out the call again. We're going to get them from X. We're getting them from Blue Sky. And we'll take a few from our members at Boston Sports Journal. A couple questions I didn't answer in the chat. And a Q&A that I did with them earlier this week. Not on purpose, guys. Sometimes you put something in, you forget to save it, you think you're done, and you're not. We'll start off with a personal favorite of mine and someone who I owe an email. Classy Claire Cooper from England. That's my great English accent. She says, hi, Mike. The O-line was decent against the Giants, even though they were without key pieces. Could this be a product of the coaching this season, or will you attribute more to the quality of opponents, or a smidge of both? I think they've actually played a lot of good defenses this year. So to me, it's a product of just the upgrading of the overall talent, Claire. I think clearly Will Campbell is not perfect, but he has been a massive upgrade at left tackle after where they've been the last couple of seasons. Jared Wilson has had, much like Campbell and maybe a little bit more, some rookie growing pains, but he has been a pretty solid football player in his first season. Ben Brown has been a nice backup for them. We saw him against Carolina step in for Wilson the first time he got hurt. Did a really good job in that game where they just stomped the Panthers. I think he had a clean sheet in that game. And then, pretty solid against the Giants, working with a new left tackle in Vidarian Lowe as Campbell recovers from the MCL sprain. So, yes, I'm going to start with talent. Garrett Bradbury actually been better than I thought. I think Minnesota was quick to run away from him. Some of the pass blocking metrics were horrific. And then when you looked at the tape, it backed it up. He really struggled in that regard. Not really struggling much this year. He'll have problems with a guy like Dexter Lawrence, but when Dexter Lawrence is right, everybody has problems with him. I tweeted something earlier in the year when Quinnen Williams got traded from the Jets to the Cowboys, and David Andrews jumped in because I was like, oh, Garrett Bradbury's got to be psyched. He doesn't have to see this guy. And it would have been, twice. They haven't played him yet. And Andrews is like, I'm psyched too, and I'm not even playing. That's how good Quinnen Williams is. But it's those sorts of guys, those sorts of freaky 340-pound dudes that move quickly. Vita Vea, another one in Tampa, that give all those guys problems. So I'm going to say talent first, but certainly coaching. And I actually think that Scott Peters didn't do a bad job last year and quickly got a job after the Patriots moved on from their coaching staff last season. But the three-pack here of Doug Marrone, a former NFL head coach, obviously, good friends of Billy O'Brien, which I think is why he is the offensive line coach here. Why am I drawing? Oh, Robert Kugler, who was on the staff last year, they kept him, and Jason Hufteling, I think I'm pronouncing it right. He's told me it before, and it obviously hasn't stuck, but having three different guys, that's unusual. And I think it's paid dividends because each of them gives a little bit something different to the players. There's a different age grouping amongst those coaches as well. So again, Ken Marrone, who the knock on him prior to, especially when he was in New Orleans, his last full-time NFL job as an offensive line coach, he got fired after 2 years, was that he couldn't reach the young players. In fact, was so brutally honest with some of them that they felt like maybe it broke a couple guys, which maybe says more about them than him. But point is, it was something to look forward to or look at this year. And that has not been a problem for any of those guys. So there you go, Claire. And I will try to remember to email you back about being on your podcast because sometimes I forget. Ryan, who is on X, Ryan J7800. When do they add Drake running packages? Seems like it's going to be needed in short yardage and red zone since they can't run it regularly. I would say that they are largely saving it for bigger moments. And the way this season has progressed, Ryan, bigger moments now means January, I think. I mean, maybe they bust something out here against Buffalo when they come back from the bye, especially if the Bills manage to beat the Bengals and keep sort of semi-heat on the Patriots in terms of the division. And then obviously the Ravens the following week. We'll see if the Ravens are even still in the mix. You got Pittsburgh this weekend in the battle for first in the AFC North. But I think they've been careful with it because of the importance of the quarterback. And as much as he runs well, he has been a little awkward. He has earlier in the year certainly taken some hits that they didn't want him to take. That has been managed very well the last 3 games. We're not even talking about the kind of hits and putting him and exposing himself like he did earlier in the year. So I just think they want to make sure he's healthy because I think they understand for this season to be what now it's lining up to be, Drake has to be as close to 100% as possible. Let's go to Matt Urban. Matt, and it's 2 U's in Urban. How would you compare this team's assistant coaching staff to that of 2021? I mean, 2021 had a load of experience, right? Charlie Weiss, Romeo Crennel, both guys who got head coaching jobs. Crennel, obviously, in the pros. Charlie in college at Notre Dame before he sort of flamed out there at Notre Dame and I think Kansas. But there was a deep reservoir of coaching experience. This staff is a lot of the position groups. It's a lot younger and less experienced than that one was. I could do the math, but just I can tell you, just looking at this group in general, that there are some guys that are still really early in their NFL coaching careers. But what they have done is, and I mentioned him in the last answer, Marone, former NFL head coach, been around the league for a long time. Um, you have Todd Downing, who has been an offensive coordinator both for Vrabel in Tennessee, and then he was the interim offensive coordinator for the Jets last year after they blew out their staff with Robert Saleh and company and Nathaniel Hackett. And now he's coaching wide receivers and doing a phenomenal job. I asked Vrabel about that, by the way, as an aside, like what made him the right guy. And he said he's just ability. And this is sort of what I was mentioning at the top about Vrabel, the ability to reach different players because they're not all the same. And you have to find out what works for each guy. You can't coach everybody just one way. You got to find out what are the right buttons to push for this player to get the best out of him. And I would say it certainly helped that Vrabel sets his culture. But like if you look at the maturity of a Pop Douglas, a Kayshon Boutte, where they were last year versus where they are this year, yeah, they were 1 year older, but Pop was probably expected to be the leading receiver or the second leading receiver once they signed Stephon Diggs. He's sort of a bit player, but he's accepted the role and he's done well with it when he gets the opportunity as a pass receiver. And Boutte doesn't get a ton of targets. He just makes the most of them when he gets them. And just blocking, like you guys don't probably pay much attention to that, but like that dude blocks like a dog out there, and that's phenomenal buy-in. So Thomas Brown, another one, was the offensive coordinator for Carolina, offensive coordinator for Chicago, then became the interim head coach for Chicago last year after they blew out their staff. So there is some high-end experience in this group, guys that have been in big positions before, guys that have been head coaches before. But in general, I don't know, pretty hard to top that 2001 staff. But we'll see how this year ends up. Maybe we will be talking about that at the end. Let's go to my guy, Damian Sharky Shark 771. Mike, from what you've seen, what would be your game plan to beat this Patriots team? What points of emphasis are needed to win? I think first things first, you want to, and I mean, every team would tell you this, but I think you want to get the Patriots in a pass-heavy script offensively because you do want to test that offensive line. As I said, it's much better than it's been. Morgan Moses has been a godsend at right tackle. But in particular, if you don't have the left side or if the left side comes back and they're compromised, which is a real possibility with the serious nature of the Will Campbell MCL sprain grade 3, which is a tear, and Jared Wilson, if that is or not a high ankle sprain, not easy to come back from either, that you're going to want to put those guys in that place where you eliminate, even though they're not a good running football team, you eliminate even the illusion of the run and the play action that comes off the run. You want to get up 10 points, 2 scores, whatever, and see if you can put them in that position where your defensive line can tee off. I think of someone like Denver or Houston. You get their edges, you get their pass rushers, not worried about the run and just being able to fly upfield. That could cause a lot of problems. And the Patriots, quite frankly, have not been in that spot very often this season, if at all, as I sit here and try to remember their overall deficits. That would be one for me. I think the other one, and we'll see if it continues post-bye, the Patriots have started to struggle a little bit against the run these last few weeks. It's after an awesome start to the year where, as you remember the stat, not giving up a running back 50 yards or more rushing. They've had some issues with that. Is that just fatigue? Is that the loss of Milton Williams? Again, he's coming back from a high ankle sprain, so we'll see what he looks like when he gets back. Kyrus Tonga missed this past week with the chest injury. We'll see what happens when he comes back as well. But so those would be some things where, you get them into a negative game script where they have to pass. That will help you defensively try to tee off on Drake Maye and that offensive line. And then the flip side is, can you control the ball? Because the way May and the offense have produced this year, it's 23 points or more in every single game this season, but one, you're going to have to score some points. So if you can kind of play a little bit of keep away, a little bit of ball control, maybe have it a 35-25 in terms of time of possession, those are the kind of things that would shape it positively for an opposing team. Let's go to this lighthearted one from a fellow CNLSer. That's such a thing. Mike Cadlick, who I don't know if you've ever seen Mike Cadlick wearing shorts. We have to see it all the time in the summer. Hasn't done leg day a day in his life. Just tiny pegs, and he should be embarrassed about that. He asked, "What's your favorite food in the Gillette Stadium press box and why?" So for years, I used to bring my own peanut butter and jelly to the press box. Not a big fan of press box food, although as I've gotten lazier, I stopped doing the peanut butter and jelly, and they pretty much serve steak tips every single game, lunch, dinner, doesn't really matter, and generally they're solid, they're effective. Had the root canal a couple weeks ago. Didn't want to get the permanent tooth in tomorrow. Didn't want to do that. So I went with the chowder. Everybody likes the chowder. To me, a little too thick. They got rid of the big cookies. The big cookies were elite. They don't have those anymore. So I don't know. I mean, it's press box food. It's not great. It's also not great when you have to sit next to Kyle's Cadlick and the great producer Amit. They're kind of annoying. Sorry, guys. Let's go to Room. Yeah, RMMM5709. Blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of numbers. Can we get an upgrade in QB2 in the near future? We have a major drop off, as most teams do, minus the Niners. I don't say that I don't care about upgrading the number 2 position, but to me, the number 2 quarterback is designed to get you through a game or two max. Josh Dobbs has done that previously in his career. I know some people want the younger quarterback. Some people still lament trading Joe Milton. Joe Milton's not mature, didn't really get it. I know he had the great game against the Buffalo backups in a game that the Buffalo Bills did not want to win in Week 18. So we'll see what happens to him. But I'm not all that concerned by it. I think, again, if something happens to Drake Maye long term, you're not winning. You might win a game or two here or there, but the whole tenor of your season changes when your quarterback goes down. Pretty hard to have 2 starters in the quarterback room, especially as competitive as those guys are. They want to play, and they won't want to sit forever. Let's go to Fernando Vasquez. Fernando rocks 12. Are you at all worried how Drake comes out of the bye week based on how he came out of the mini bye in Cincinnati? He looked out of rhythm. I guess a little bit. Yeah, I think there are times you've seen at the beginning of games that he's a little amped up and he might put one into the third row of the stands. He might be behind a receiver. He might get out of the pocket a little bit earlier than he should because he's got those, it's not even nerves. He's just got that energy going. So yeah, I guess I could be. That was the first 3 drives, I guess it was, against Cincinnati were the worst 3 drives he's had in succession, probably since week 1 against the Vegas Raiders. But that's how freaking good he's been that we are losing our minds because, for three drives, he can't play well or doesn't play at the level that we expect him to. So, yeah, I guess I would be concerned about that. Of course, the Bills playing this weekend against who the hell are they playing? Bengals. I already mentioned that. So they'll stay in rhythm, but they're also a little bit beat up. I know no Joey Bosa for them this weekend. No Joshua Palmer, I don't believe, this weekend. Deion Dawkins coming back at left tackle. I'm not sure if Spencer Brown is going to play, at least as of the recording of this. Again, not even noon here on Friday, December the 5th. Let's go to USA K9, which is, as it sounds, USA_K9. Do you expect any contract extensions during the bye week? It's a good question. I've been kind of hunting around on this. I felt like maybe something was in the offing, or could be, I should say could be, let me phrase that properly, could be in the offing for Kairos Tonga, who has done everything they've asked and had played very, very well. But you start to look around the rest of the team. Where could they go? Who could they extend? Could they play with Jalen Hawkins' contract because Vrabel is a big Jalen Hawkins guy and maybe give him some more guaranteed money going forward? I think that's sort of the things that we're looking at. I wonder with Tonga, like 2-12, 2-10, who says no? But he would be a good guy, I think, to keep around because not only his play, which has been outstanding, and actually two-way play, what he did at fullback before the injury, but really, really good fit in the locker room. And Vrabel just raved about him the other day. It was like he was really upset after the Cincinnati game because he only lasted a quarter in that game before the injury, or quarter and change. And Mike Reese from ESPN talked to him, and he said he was like really distraught. Like, I let my guys down. I know we won, but like they were counting on me. And Vrabel was asked that question, and he's like, Kyrus Tonga will never let anyone down as long as he's here, as long as he's a New England Patriot. So, yeah, I would think that Kyrus Tonga is on a list of people to extend. Let's go to Matthew McClure, Matthew MCCC, 9C2. That's a lot of C's. Who is the biggest threat in the playoffs? Excellent question. I would say I would not want to go into Denver if the seeds were to shift, because Denver is a house of horrors, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But currently, there's a team that's not in the playoffs, at least as it stands this morning, that I think is playing excellent football, and I think has an incredible defense that, with two guys on the edges and Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, that can ruin a football game for you. And that, of course, is the Houston Texans. They started off 0-3. They've won 7 out of their last 9. Their defensive stats are ridiculous this year. They're allowing 265 yards in total offense this season, which I believe is first in the National Football League, allowing 16.5 points per game. They're awesome. You saw what they did to Buffalo. And look, your offense has been better than Buffalo's this year. I'm not going to deny that, but they sacked Josh Allen 8 times and just effectively ruined that football game for the Bills. And again, the Bills needed to win. So those guys are scary as hell. They have 3 of the top 6 guys in terms of passer rating against in the secondary, meaning when you throw that way, you generally don't succeed. Both their safeties, Kalen Bullock and Jalen Petrie, and then, of course, Derek Stingley Jr., who was the number 3 pick in the draft several years ago and is all that and a bag of chips. They scare the hell out of me because I just could see one of those days where those guys are cooking with pinning their ears back and strip sacks, breaking your quarterback in half. They have a big injury. Tim Settle, one of their defensive linemen. I mean, not a great player, but a solid role player, out for the year. I think it was a foot or an ankle. But they're one who scares me. And I would throw in Kansas City. And again, they might not make it. They're also on the outside looking in. They were talking this week, Kansas City guys, Kelsey, Mahomes, how many games have come down to the wire with them. And this year, unlike last year, they're losing a lot of these one-score games, but it's a play here or a play there. If somehow they can flip that script, while it's not the same Kansas City team that it's been, they are still freaking good. Before we continue, I got to talk to you about life insurance. It's very important. You want to make sure that your family is taken care of. I certainly have that at number 1 on my priority list. God forbid something were to happen to me, as I knock on wood right there. I want to make sure that college educations are taken care of, the house is taken care of, that there is no financial burden placed on my loved ones. And that's, I think, very important. As you get older, you got to think about these things, and that's where Ethos comes in. Ethos is an online platform that makes getting life insurance fast and easy to protect your family's future in minutes, not months. There's no complicated process. It is 100% online. Yay to that. No medical exam required. You just answer a few health questions. Think about that. And you can get a quote in as little as 10 minutes. Who doesn't like that? You can get same-day coverage without ever leaving the house. And life insurance, more affordable than you think. With Ethos, you can get a free quote and customize a rate that fits your budget. If you want $3 million worth of coverage, you qualify for it, you can get that. If you want to spend as little as $2 a day and still protect your assets and your family, you can do that as well with Ethos. Incredibly trustworthy. Over 3 million families have used Ethos, and the satisfaction rate, 4.8 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot. So protect your family with life insurance from Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/all32. That's right. We sent you there. That's Ethos, ETHOS.com/all32. All right, back to the questions we go. Oh, this is an interesting one from Bravel Patrick, Braval Patrick. There might be 2 L's in there. Is there room for Pop Douglas on next year's roster? They'll be extending a few guys, and he seems like an intermediate contributor. I would agree. Just mentioned him as sort of being someone who is now more of a niche role player, right? Did a nice job in the game on Monday night against the Giants, especially in the 2-minute drill right before the half. Twice against zone, which has been a problem for him because he doesn't have the greatest feel as a receiver. Finding holes and seams against zones, showing his numbers to the quarterback, and making a couple big catches there. He also got a couple run plays blown up, and that's maybe why he's probably not the greatest fit for the Josh McDaniels offense long term, because they ask the slot receivers to get dirty, to dig out safeties and outside linebackers, and even on occasion, chip a defensive end. And he is 180 pounds, and that's not easy for him to do. That said, he's still got one more year on the contract after this year. So I don't see any reason why you would move on from him. And then we'll see. Who knows? Who knows? He gains 10 pounds in the offseason, figures that part of it out. But for now, really nice piece to have as your third or fourth guy, depending on sort of what formations you go into. And has, to his credit, really seemed to get the mental aspect of what's being asked of him and how to do it. Last question on the X. It comes from George Ryan Jr., Patriots _Harley. Is Caden Wallace really that bad where he can't find the field despite all the injuries to the O-line? It's hard to call someone bad when they're on an NFL roster. But I would tell you that I didn't think he was going to survive training camp, and I think he barely did. And as I've written a number of times, either on Boston Sports Journal or said it on TV or here on the podcast, I think he's like the 52nd or 53rd guy on the active roster. And obviously he's been inactive for the majority. Maybe last week was the first time he was up all season long. And they still decided when they went jumbo to go with Thayer Mumford, who they just signed off Cleveland's practice squad, albeit did have some experience playing for Josh McDaniels in Vegas. But that just kind of tells you he was here briefly, went to Cleveland, brought him back, and then put him in as the jumbo tight end over Caden Wallace, over Marcus Bryant, who has been on the active roster pretty much the entirety of the season. So I don't know if they didn't like what they saw from Marcus. I certainly think that they've showed you how they felt about Caden. That draft, the Drake Maye draft, is just, it's a rough one. It's a rough one. It's if you're the anti Elliott Wolf, Matt Groh camp, that draft is one to point at and say you didn't get anything out of it other than obviously a guy who could be the MVP. So be that as it may, he was the third quarterback taken. It was just kind of in your lap. He could have traded back, I guess. So give him credit for not doing that. But anyway, 2024 draft. Big hunk of junk. Let's go to Blue Sky. Gran Jordanian, who's a chronic on BSJ and has migrated over to Blue Sky. Mike, at 11-2, it's pretty clear that the current roster is a solid, very solid foundation with young guys and vets under contract. If we subscribe to the free agency is for the next year, wait, let me see. Somehow that got cut off. Hold, please. Free agency is for this year. The draft is for the future mantra. It seems like we're right where we need to be heading into April's draft. Yes, I would agree. And I've been saying all year long, even as they started to win, that they were still a offseason away, roster building wise, from having the kind of team, the kind of depth that Vrabel and the staff wants and needs. So that's why the 11-2 is even more surprising. Obviously, being healthy for a good part of the season certainly has helped too. Finally getting tested on that front with Campbell, Wilson, and Williams out, but by and large had been pretty healthy. But yeah, I would say this offseason is another big one. They've got money to spend. We'll see if Robert backs up the Brinks truck for a second straight offseason. That's not something he necessarily loves to do. They like to look at it in 3-year windows, and they spent a ton last year. So we'll see how that plays out. But they've got their full cachet of draft picks, a couple extras in there as well. And if this draft is any indication, then you have to feel pretty good about what they've done this year and hope that they can repeat it next year. And if they do, I think they have at this point 39 starts out of their four of their top five picks between Campbell, Trevion Henderson, who has a handful of starts, Jared Wilson, and Craig Woodson. So 39 starts between those guys, and you got one for Joshua Farmer. And then obviously the amount of playing time that the whole group has got. Kyle Williams doesn't start, but he's played. He's had a couple big plays, including one against the Giants. And then, as much as I can't stand when you waste draft capital on specialists, Julian Ashby, long snapper, haven't really had to call his name very much. Maybe once or twice where he's been like, oh, he bobbed his head and got a penalty. Bad snaps, can't really remember one. And Borregales, after looking like week 2 might be, what is this? Has rebounded really well. Didn't love the way he kicked the ball against the Giants. Just for the record, a lot of low. It's the first real cold game for him. Sub 30, I think, by the time that game was kicked off. So that's just something to watch. But he's been good. And they've even gotten performances from a UDFA in Elijah Ponder, who I think now has up to 3 sacks. And I don't think he's explosive in any stretch of the imagination, but he's given him some quality reps on the edge. Let's go to K. Finn. Once it's playoff time, I assume we're going to 1, see design runs for Maye and key spots goal line, which we talked about earlier. And then 2, Diggs plays nearly all the snaps unless it's an obvious running situation, should make the offense better. Thoughts? I don't think they're going to jump his snaps to like 85%. I think they like the rotation they have. They like the production they're getting from a number of players. I could see it going up some, but who are you eating from? Maybe you can cheat a few slot snaps from Pop and put it onto Diggs's plate, but they like keeping Hollins out there because it gives you that. Well, he is a big part of the run game, but it gives you that run illusion. I think he's actually playing really well too. Like his coming back to the football, his work at the top of his route, and sort of the way he comes back to the football, better than I expected it to be from a guy that's kind of bounced around the league. And Booty is someone who has also done a really good job as a run blocker. And as I said, when he gets the opportunity, he's making the most of them. So I don't know that they'll up it too much. I think they like the balance that they have. I am going to, where's this one? B. Robin. I think this is from Blue Sky, but it might have been from the Twitter machine. Where do you put Christian Gonzalez in terms of corners? How far below Surtain would you have him? Is he top 3, top 5, top 10 corner in the NFL? Well, I haven't thought that he's been that this year. And, if you go to PFF, they'll tell you otherwise. I would just tell you the eye test has said that, and understandably at the beginning when he came back from the hamstring, that he wasn't quite certain of it. I think they've showed you at times that they're not quite certain or weren't at that point where he was in terms of his play and kicking the rust off and didn't really lean into man. They still haven't leaned a ton into man coverage. I would say I thought this past week against the Giants was the best you've gotten out of him and Carlton Davis in the same game. They really kind of eliminated the outside quadrants of the field. And you do that puts a ton of pressure on opposing quarterbacks and offensive coordinators and offenses in general. I thought they were terrific in that regard. But I'll give you this, and this comes from FTN and Aaron Schatz, who's the king of the DVOA, right? I believe the co-founder of that, him and Kerry Byrne. They have one for cornerbacks. Just came out today as we're doing this, Friday, December 5th. And I'll just to give you a little precursor, he wrote, the cornerback coverage metric looks at every snap with a cornerback in coverage and then how often he either allows a successful reception, earns a DPI penalty, or gets an interception. The numbers are adjusted for opponent and for where the receiver in question was lined up before the play. Receivers lined up in the slot tend to have more success than those lined up wide, but the receivers lined up wide are often the more talented and overall successful players. On that list, Christian Gonzalez is 53rd amongst all cornerbacks. Jamal Dean is number 1 from Tampa Bay. Dante Jackson from the Chargers is 2. Lenore from San Francisco is a really good player. He's 3. DJ Turner, who we saw with Cincinnati, probably Cincinnati's best defensive player with Trey Hendrickson out. He's number 4. Will Johnson, the rookie from Arizona, is 6. Quinyon Mitchell is an awesome player. He's 8th for Philly. Surtain is 10th. And then you go down. Stingley is 14th. J.C. Horn is 18th. Cooper DeJean, who's a terrific player, he's 20. And you just sort of go down and down. I'm like, where is A.J. Terrell from Atlanta is 28th. Jack Jones is 31st. Tre'Davious White is 32. And Christian Gonzalez all the way down at 53, which to me, that backs up the eye test. I don't think it has been Christian's best year. I don't think he is a all-pro player. He may end up in the Pro Bowl, but I don't care about the Pro Bowl. I think Brandon Merriweather made the Pro Bowl twice, if you go back that far. Mac Jones is a Pro Bowl quarterback. Drake made it last year, and he won one game and didn't, he was like the sixth choice. As guys don't go, and then you end up being a Pro Bowler. To me, you know what a Pro Bowler looks like. You know the numbers, what they look like, and I don't think he's had that this year. But, again, maybe trending in the right direction, and that's what they need. And big games coming up, Thought he actually played pretty well against Buffalo the first time around, and that was right coming off the injury. So now let's see what he's got, because I think if he and Davis are playing at their best, they can erase both the Bills and the Ravens receivers. And Zay Flowers is the best receiver of those two teams, and not really, to me, a true number one. But, you take those guys out, and 11-2 is going to become 13-2, and they'll have kicked down a few more of these concerns that people had, or games that they've circled. And let's go lastly to my guy Loudon Swain from Boston Sports Journal. Somehow, in answering however many questions I had to answer on BSJ, I missed his question. Mike, do you have any PTSD about past Mile High debacles and feel like it has any relevance now? Whether high or low key. I know this is cherry picking the schedule, but at home they allowed 32 to the Giants, is the Broncos he's talking about, and won by 1. Beat the Jets by 2 and beat the Raiders by 3. That's not the Elway Broncos or Manning Broncos, maybe not even the Plummer Broncos. I definitely have PTSD about Denver, because I just think when they're good, it's really hard to play offense there. And I think if you ask Tom Brady that, he would tell you that. They had some just dogfights, even in games they won, where you just kind of scrape by. That stadium gets so loud, and the way it's built, where you're in the press box, you actually feel the stadium move. There aren't too many places like that in the National Football League. And in that game that they lost in the AFC Championship game, I'm forgetting what year that was, but you know what I'm talking about. It was the Peyton Manning game. Brady got hit 20-something times. Patriots couldn't hear, so you went to the silent count. Brian Stork, very culpable in the loss to center, because he was giving away the silent count with the head bob, which allowed the edge rushers to go bananas. DeMarcus Ware was in the backfield the entire time. A few other guys were as well. But that's the kind of thing that can happen in those places, even with an experienced center like Garrett Bradbury. And again, we'll see. You would be sending, if they're healthy, 2 rookies on the left side into that environment. You say, well, they're not rookies anymore. They played the full season. They haven't had many environments like that. So if that were to happen, that would be a difficult spot, because they haven't had to lean too heavily on the silent count this year, Buffalo being one of the few places that they did. And they did a decent job. Wasn't a great game from the left side of that offensive line, but a decent job, enough to win the game. But just sort of one of those things that can help at least narrow the margin. And certainly with the rush that Denver has, with Benito, with Allen, with Cooper, I don't know that I would put it in the same level, or at least I put their skill at the same level as I put Anderson and Hunter from Houston, but maybe as an entire group of pass rushers, that's probably the best one in the league. Vance Josephs will blitz the hell out of you. Drake's been very good against that. But yeah, that would give me a little bit of concern and caution. And what I would say about Denver in general, I just don't love their offense. Nix seems to have that little winning quotient, and we've seen a number of game-winning drives and things like that during the course of his first 2 years. But they're not a very good running football team, and they're not a consistent passing team. So that seems to me like a team that if you don't turn the ball over that the Patriots could hold them under 20, and can then Denver do the same thing to New England would become the question for me. And the way that the offense has played this year, very few, if any, teams, the Raiders, have been able to do that to them. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of the All 32 podcast. I appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to me prattle on, and then really struggle with my words there at the end. Should have brought water down here. I hope you guys have an awesome weekend. Sit on the couch, or actually, if your significant other and you're constantly taking Sundays away from them, maybe give them a little bit of a bonus here and go do something on Sunday. Go get the Christmas tree or something, Christmas shopping, go to dinner, do something where, you make them happy, because you'll be locked in for the rest of the way. Certainly with the 1:00 game coming up against the Bills this following weekend. And then I think that Ravens game's probably going to get flexed and be a night game on Sunday, but we'll see. That has not yet happened. For those listening to the show, we ask you to subscribe to the podcast, like and leave a review. For those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead, hit the like button, subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel, where you can find our show, a lot of other great content. Kyle's, Cadlick, who asked a question and doesn't do leg day. Callahan, he and I do the podcast after games on Mondays or Tuesdays, whenever the hell they play the games. Who else we got? Doug Kide, Michael Hurley out there doing their thing as well. Badad and Cattles. Yeah, so plenty of stuff there. Make sure that you turn on your notifications. Instant a new video drops. I appreciate you as always. Enjoy the weekend, and we will get back next week, and it is the stretch run. Looking forward to it. We have meaningful football in December. Haven't been able to say that for a few years. I'll talk to you.